What would you do if you saw someone being humiliated for not having enough money? Would you walk away? Or would you step in? Today's story will show you how one waitress's $5 act of kindness changed two lives forever. But the twist? She had no idea the man she helped was worth billions. Stay until the end, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. Picture this, a rainy Tuesday morning in downtown Seattle. The kind of day where everyone's rushing to escape the cold, seeking warmth in the nearest coffee shop. At Brewster's Cafe, the morning rush was in full swing. Steam rose from espresso machines, conversations buzzed between tables, and the rich aroma of coffee filled the air. It was exactly the kind of place where people minded their own business, until something happened that would change everything. The front door opened, and in walked a man who immediately caught everyone's attention, but not for the reasons you might think. He was in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair plastered to his forehead from the rain. His coat was threadbare, his shoes scuffed and worn. Water dripped from his clothes onto the polished floor as he approached the counter hesitantly. You could see him scanning the menu, his eyes settling on the simplest option. The young barista behind the register rang up the order with practiced efficiency. But then came the moment that would expose the true character of everyone in that room. The man reached into his pockets, then his other pockets, his movements becoming more frantic with each passing second. His face went pale. What happened next was heartbreaking. The barista crossed his arms and smirked, his voice loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. The man's cheeks flushed deep red, but the humiliation was just beginning. From a nearby table, a group of well-dressed customers began to chime in. The man's shoulders hunched as laughter rippled through the room. He turned toward the door, carrying the weight of their judgment. But someone was watching, someone who couldn't stand by and let this happen. Her name was Emma Bennett. 29 years old, auburn hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a modest waitress uniform that had seen better days. She'd been clearing tables when the scene unfolded and something inside her snapped. Emma walked to the counter and slapped a $5 bill down with authority. The barista's smirk faltered. But Emma wasn't backing down. She turned to face the room, her voice carrying a strength that silenced every conversation. The cafe fell silent, you could hear a pin drop. Emma turned to the man with a gentle smile. Why did Emma do it? The answer takes us back 15 years to a moment that shaped her entire worldview. Emma was just 17 when her mother collapsed in a crowded street market. People walked around them like they were obstacles, stepping over her unconscious mother without a second glance. All except one person, an elderly woman in a patched skirt who knelt down, offered water and wrapped her own shawl around Emma's shoulders. Emma never learned that woman's name, but she made herself a promise that day. If she ever had the chance to be that person for someone else, she would take it. So when she saw that man, wet, ashamed, invisible, there was no decision to make. She did what needed to be done. That night, Emma went home to the cramped one-bedroom apartment she shared with her sick younger sister Lily. She checked her wallet, $3, a subway token, and a faded photo of their mother. No regret, not for the coffee, not for anything. But kindness, as Emma would learn, sometimes comes with a price. The next morning, her manager Brian called her into his office. Her coworkers whispered behind her back, calling her naive, saying she thought she was playing hero. But Emma held her head high, as she later whispered to herself in the darkness of her apartment. 4 days passed, 4 long shifts filled with whispers and sideways glances. Emma had learned to live with being invisible, but now she was visible for all the wrong reasons. Then on Thursday morning, something extraordinary happened. A tall man entered the cafe dressed in a charcoal suit and silk scarf. His salt and pepper hair was neatly combed, his shoes polished to perfection. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not this modest neighborhood cafe. But there was something familiar about his eyes. Emma froze. The man didn't go to the counter. Instead, he walked directly to the same table by the window where a humiliated stranger had once sat. He sat down and waited. Emma approached with a menu, her heart pounding. And in that moment, Emma realized the impossible truth. The broken man from 4 days ago and this polished gentleman were the same person. His name was Charles H. Everlyn, founder and CEO of Everlyn Holdings, a global infrastructure company operating in 12 countries, worth approximately $3.2 billion. But wealth, as Charles explained, had become both his blessing and his curse. Charles hadn't forgotten his wallet that rainy morning. He had deliberately left it behind. He wanted to see what people would do when there was nothing to gain from kindness. Emma sat across from him, processing this revelation. What followed was the most extraordinary 3 months of Emma's life, but not in the way you might expect. Charles didn't sweep her away to 5-star hotels or yacht parties. Instead, she found herself traveling with him to small towns and forgotten communities. They visited orphanages where children ran to Charles not because he gave them expensive gifts, but because he remembered their birthdays and favorite books. They went to shelters for recovering addicts where Charles spoke little but listened deeply. They sat on porches of half-built homes funded by his foundation, eating soup with people who had no idea the man across from them owned half the city skyline. Emma watched it all in quiet amazement. Charles never announced himself, never sought praise. When she asked him why, he simply said. Everywhere they went, Emma saw the same thing in his eyes, not searching for gratitude but for connection. And more than once, she caught her own reflection and realized she was smiling in a way she hadn't in years. One evening, sitting on the porch of a cabin in rural Quebec, Charles opened his heart completely. Emma's response was as honest as it was beautiful. They didn't kiss, they didn't declare undying love. What they shared was something rarer: recognition. 2 souls shaped by different lives finding quiet resonance in the space between their scars. 3 months later, Charles made an offer that would have changed Emma's life forever. He presented her with legal documents to establish a foundation in her name, the Emma Bennett Opportunity Fund. But Emma's response surprised him. Charles smiled, not with surprise but with the quiet pride of someone who had known all along this day would come. 6 months later, Emma stood across the street from a familiar building. The same cafe where everything began, but now it was hers. She had renovated the space completely, painting the walls, refinishing the floors, replacing the harsh lighting with something warm and welcoming. Above the door, elegant lettering spelled out the first cup. Below it, a simple motto: no one should have to earn kindness. Inside, the atmosphere was completely different. Soft jazz played, shelves lined with donated books created cozy reading nooks, and a chalkboard near the counter didn't list prices. Instead, it read, "Your first cup is on us, your second, if you can, pay for someone else." On opening day, as if the universe had a sense of poetry, a man entered who looked remarkably familiar. Older, hunched, soaked from the rain, his hands trembled as he held the door. A young barista stepped forward, about to repeat the cruel words that had started this whole journey, but Emma was there. As Emma worked that day, she glanced out the window and saw a familiar figure across the street. Charles stood under a black umbrella, watching with pride. He didn't wave or come inside. He simply nodded once, a gesture of gratitude, farewell, and promise, then disappeared into the rain. That evening, during the soft opening, Emma addressed her first customers. She paused, looking around the room filled with faces both familiar and new. Her voice grew softer, more personal. Emma didn't need a miracle. She didn't chase wealth or recognition. All she did was choose to care on a rainy morning when no one else would. And sometimes that's all it takes to change not just one life but 2, to remind us that kindness isn't weakness, it's courage. That dignity isn't determined by what's in your wallet but by what's in your heart. The next time you see someone struggling, someone being made small, someone who just needs a moment of human decency, remember Emma. remember that $5 can change the world. Because you never know who's watching, you never know whose life hangs in the balance of your choice to care. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the quiet power of compassion, please like this video and subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories. In the comments below, tell us about a time when a stranger's kindness changed your day, or when you had the chance to be that stranger for someone else. Until next time, remember, the world doesn't change through grand gestures, it changes through small acts of courage, one cup of coffee at a time.